I have decided to let go of the notion of hope. And I want to invite you in this two-part series this week and next week to try it for yourself. Hope tricks us into thinking that simply having hope is enough. That if we just keep wishing and hoping for a better tomorrow, that it'll magically appear. We cling to hope in the future because we can't handle being in the present. It creates an illusion of control and certainty. But hope tricks you into believing that you can find control and certainty in some future la-la land. And when that happens, it deprives you of the invitation to learn how to work with what's happening right now. Welcome to the GenX Shift podcast, a show for Gen Xers who are navigating some pretty tough transitions and aren't sure how to move forward. I'm your host, Michele Walter, proud Gen Xer, former lawyer turned entrepreneur, huge Jason Momoa fan, and margarita snob. And I've navigated a lot of transitions in my life, from losing my mom suddenly to a heart attack to starting my own business. But I often did it all on my own because I was too stubborn to ask for help. Now I'm on a mission to give actionable strategies to other Gen Xers so that they can find the confidence, courage, and clarity they need to make a shift. So let's rock and roll. Hey, Gen Xers, welcome back to the podcast. This is the first episode of 2025, so Happy New Year. I hope that your holidays were kind to you and that you have entered 2025 with some renewed energy. But however you find yourself as we enter into this new year, I want to offer you something in today's episode, which is actually going to be a two-parter that might actually ruffle some feathers a little bit. I thought, what the hell? Let's start the new year off by maybe challenging some of you. As I was entering into the last few weeks of 2024, I noticed something shifting in me. And it's something that I wanted to share with all of you because I think it has the power to profoundly change how we approach our lives, how we make the shifts that we want to make in our life. And because I'm not a fan of New Year's resolutions, if you are, that's great. If they work for you, I'm really happy for you. I find New Year's resolutions to be kind of a letdown. Most people give up on their New Year's resolutions around January 9th. So I haven't done resolutions in a long time. Usually I start the year by a lot of planning. I have a huge spreadsheet with all the goals, all the numbers, everything I want to accomplish for that year, professionally, personally, physically, spiritually, intellectually, you name it. I haven't even done that this year. Probably not even going to do it at all. And the reason is that what I noticed started to shift for me toward the end of 2024 was making a decision to give up hope. And I don't mean that from a defeatist point of view. I have decided to let go of the notion of hope. And I want to invite you in this two-part series this week and next week to try it for yourself. So hear me out. Don't get upset and think I'm telling you to be hopeless, because that's just the different side of the same coin. I have some pretty good arguments. The lawyer in me came out to make some pretty good arguments as to why I think Gen Xers in particular should give up hope. And why instead we should start to embrace three things that I'll reveal to you in next week's episode so that we can start to breathe new life into not only how we approach 2025, but also how we approach all of the shifts that we want to start making for ourselves in our life. The last couple of years have been beyond challenging for me for reasons that I'll explain and get into a little bit more next week. I want to share a little bit of my personal journey with you next week. And so as I started reflecting at the end of 2024 about what did I want going forward in 2025, I started to realize that hope had really been the source of a lot of disappointment, frustration, and lack of action for me in 2024 and in my past. So I've decided, instead of hoping, that I'm going to start taking action, and then I'm going to start breathing fire into 2025 and how I live my life. The name of this 2-part series is Rising from the Ashes: How Gen Xers Can Ditch Hope, Take Action, and Breathe Fire into 2025. So come along with me for this ride over these next 2 series. Get curious about how hope may not actually be what you need to start making shifts in your life, and lean into a little bit of discomfort as I invite you to give up some hope. So in part 1 this week, I'm going to cover what hope is, why Gen Xers in particular, I think, have been indoctrinated into this cultural fascination that we have with hope, and 5 problems that I see with having hope. And then next week, I'm going to share, as I mentioned, my personal journey of emerging from the ashes of 2024. I kind of see it like Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones. For all you Game of Thrones fans out there, if you're not a fan, sorry, this might be lost on you. But there's that beautiful scene where she walks into the fire in the first season or second season, when her husband, Jason Momoa, has died, and she walks into the hut that's been on fire, and she emerges from it covered in ashes with 3 dragons on her shoulder. That's a beautiful visual for me as I came out of 2024, and I'll share more next week about why that is. And then I'm going to talk next week about the 3 things that I'm doing to fully rise out of those ashes and breathe fire from deep inside me, from my inner wisdom and my inner power that you also have, and how I'm going to breathe that fire into this year and beyond. So let's get into it this week. Again, stay curious, hear me out, and let's start with what hope is. Hope has different meanings depending on the context. It can be a feeling or an expectation of something that you desire or really want to have happen. It can be an optimistic belief or confidence in a better future. It can be a source of inspiration or something that you're looking forward to. Here in the US, and probably in a lot of other westernized cultures, we have this cultural fixation on hope. It's romanticized in books, in movies, even in some religious teachings, as the thing that's going to carry us through when all else seems lost. Hope is handed out as the only antidote that we have to despair. Kind of like over-the-counter medications are marketed as the only antidote to physical pain. If hope had an advertising message, like whoever does hope's marketing, it would be something like, hope, the only light you need to carry you through the dark. That's how we think of hope. We're told from a very young age to never lose hope, to stay hopeful. And Gen Xers in particular were raised on hope as much as we were raised on Saturday morning cartoons and American Bandstand. Our parents, our grandparents were emerging from some pretty dark times in the United States and around the world with the history of World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War. And given what they'd been through, it makes sense that they wanted to instill in their kids a sense of hope for better things to come, for a better world. And so as we Gen Xers were kind of coming on the scene, we were seeing hope for better times ahead with things like the civil rights movement, the women's rights movements. Advertising in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, particularly around health and fitness, was drenched in hope, showing us shiny, happy people, telling us Look at all you can hope to be. We were inundated with advertising messages to dream big, the American dream, work hard, hope for success. Movies like Star Wars infused us with hope for a better tomorrow and for more just societies. The boom and bust economies, like the stock market crash of 1987, for example, it reinforced the idea that better times are just around the corner. Just hang on a little bit more, hang on to hope, and you'll see better economy. And so, despite Gen Xers' proclivity for cynicism, which I know a lot of us have, underneath that cynicism, we really have a fragile sense of hope. Hope that things are going to get better. Hope that I will get better. Hope that my life will get better. Hope that the world will get better. And yet I think that fragile sense of hope has contributed somewhat to our cynicism, because the fact is that sometimes shit doesn't work out the way we hoped it would. And then when it doesn't, we're disappointed. Our fragile sense of hope is shattered. We see that hope proves to be unreliable, and yet we still cling to it. And so we kind of oscillate between hope and cynicism. And I think the reason is because we're afraid of, what if I don't have hope? What do I have then? What's left? We fear being hopeless. And as I said, being hopeless is just the same coin, just a different side. We want to cling to hope because we're too afraid of what it means if we don't have hope. We cling to that messaging of hope. It's the only light that can get us through the dark. Damn, that's a good ad campaign. So to address that what if, I want to first look at 5 problems that I see with hope. We have a saying, I've said it before, I think on this podcast, back in Nebraska at least, that you can wish in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up first. I think hope and wish are the same thing. So you can hope in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up first. There can be several problems with hoping against all hope in one hand and that kind of shitting in the other. You know which one is going to fill up first, and yet we keep doing it. And so let's raise our awareness around the 5 problems that I see with hope so that maybe we can start to question why we're clinging so bad to that empty hand of hope. The first problem is that hope doesn't do anything. Hope doesn't even rise to the level of a Hail Mary. You know, with a Hail Mary, you actually pick up the ball and you throw it or you shoot it. You have hope that it will score a point, and you're still taking a step to put that hope into action by throwing the ball or shooting the ball. But with hope, you just kind of stand there looking at the ball, hoping for a Hail Mary. You don't even pick up the ball. You just look at it and say, well, hope for the Hail Mary, and walk away. Oftentimes when we're hoping, we're not actually doing anything. We just kind of throw up our hands, walk away and say, well, hope it works out. Or we sit there with our fists clenching and saying, oh, I really hope this happens. I hope I win the lottery. And maybe we go get the lottery ticket, but that's still not really doing anything. And that brings me to the second problem with hope. The second problem is that hope takes your focus away from your own power. When we hope for something, we're basically taking focus away from the power we have inside of us to actually take some kind of action. Hope tricks us into thinking that simply having hope is enough. That if we just keep wishing and hoping for a better tomorrow, that it'll magically appear. But hope by itself is very passive. It's a placeholder for action. What gets us through the hard stuff, the challenging times, the dark times, isn't just sitting around and hoping. It's doing. It's taking small, deliberate steps, even when the path ahead isn't clear, even when it's pitch black. Now, you can maybe have hope and take action. But do you usually do that? Do you usually sit and hope and hope and hope and then get up and take some action? No, you usually hope and hope and hope and then get up and go on about your day. And I want to pause here to distinguish between hope and visualization. I, as a coach and a mindfulness teacher, I wholeheartedly believe in visualizing our future and our goals and the things that we want to make happen. That type of visualization, however, involves what I call embodied work. It involves tuning into your body, to physical sensations, emotions, feelings, where you tap into sensations and energy that's in your body, coursing through you, to sense into what it will feel like when you reach your goals or you have the future that you're visualizing. But visualization without action is no better than hope. So you can sit and visualize till the cows come home, and you can feel every cell in your body light up when you visualize the future that you want or the goals that you want to achieve. But if you don't get up then and take action and make it happen, guess what? You're still going to have an empty hand of visualization. It's the same as an empty hand of hope. So I believe that visualization and techniques like heart-brain coherence that you hear people like Joe Dispenza talking about, combined with action, are much more powerful strategies than just throwing up your hands and saying, well, I hope I get the future I want. Problem number 3 with hope is that it takes us out of the present moment. Now, as a mindfulness meditation teacher, I guide people in staying in the present moment, connecting to the moment, to yourself, to your breath, to your body, because mindfulness encourages focus on the present moment rather than projecting our desires into the future. Hope, by its very definitions, doesn't live in the present moment. Hope lives entirely in the future. Hope isn't optimism, which can live in the present. Hope is the desire for the future to be different than what the present is right now. Optimism can still exist in the present, even when the present is challenging. You can still be filled with positivity and optimism, a belief, a faith, even when the present moment isn't what you want it to be. But hope takes all of that and puts it into the future, out of the present moment. Hope, like fear, is future-oriented. It distracts us from the here and the now. And that can be so seductive because there's an allure in the idea that things might get better someday. Hope makes us think that something outside of the present moment is the only thing that can bring us relief. And that brings me to problem number 4. Hope makes us cling to the future. Mindfulness also teaches us that attachment and clinging to outcomes, whether good or bad, just creates suffering. Hope often involves a longing for a specific future event or a condition that we cling to or we attach to, often at the expense of fully disregarding the present moment. And I get it, right? Like if the present moment sucks, we want to be anywhere but here. So we attach to that hope for a better future. That's the seduction of it. And then when we cling to hope and then often become dissatisfied or disappointed because shit doesn't work out the way we hoped it would, we have a setback because we've tied our happiness to something uncertain and external and down the road. In my mindfulness training, we learned this phrase called if-then thinking. If this happens, then I'll be happy. If I get a job, then I'll be stable. If I find a partner, then I'll be loved. If I lose 20 pounds, then I'll feel good about myself. That kind of if-then thinking is all about the future. And hope is the same thing. Hope is if-then thinking. You hope for something to happen because then, and only then, do you think you'll be happy or secure or stable or pretty or loved or whatever it might be. We cling to hope in the future because we can't handle being in the present. The fifth problem with hope is that it creates an illusion of control and certainty. We often don't like what's going on in the present moment because it feels uncertain and we feel out of control. And that makes the present moment seem too unbearable. So we check out, we disconnect because human beings don't like uncertainty and lack of control. And so to be anywhere but where we have no control and no certainty, we project ourselves, our lives into the future where we can imagine, we can hope that it's all worked out and we have all the certainty and control that we ever wanted. Hope is the alluring drug that offers us the illusion of control and certainty. Much like drugs or alcohol, hope allows us to avoid and disconnect from the discomfort that we're experiencing in the present moment. Instead of learning how to be present about what is happening in this moment, we time travel essentially into the future where everything is certain and everything and everyone is under our control. Problem solved. But is it really? Life is never going to be certain. And you, my dear time traveler, my dear hopeful human, are only ever in control of one thing. And that is your response to what is happening. That's the only thing you're in control of. But hope tricks you into believing that you can find control and certainty in some future la-la land. And when that happens, it deprives you of the invitation to learn how to work with what's happening right now in the present moment. And you can learn how to do that. What it does is it ends up depriving you of the ability to really cultivate resilience. Because if we're constantly living in the future hope, disconnecting from the present, we're not actually cultivating the skill set that we need to face challenging and dark times and build resilience, learn from it, get feedback, and grow. Hope also creates what I call this hope hangover. So when things inevitably don't work out like we'd hope they would, you end up being disappointed, disillusioned, or even if things magically do work out the way you'd hoped, then it just reinforces the mistaken belief that all you need is hope. Either way, you kind of have this hope hangover. And with that hope hangover, you can't build resilience to facing and working through what's happening in the present moment that's been so challenging. So those are the 5 problems that I see with hope. Let's pause there and take a breath, because that was a lot. Take a deep breath. What do you notice coming up for you around those 5 problems that I highlighted about hope? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'd love to hear what you think. There's no right or wrong answer here. These are just my musings. I'd love to hear yours. But if you're knowing that, if you're feeling like you're getting agitated, that's okay. That's good. That's a good thing, because you're being challenged to think differently about something that you've had shoved down your throat most of your life. And now you're getting outside of your comfort zone and thinking differently about that. So, how do we ditch hope? Well, that's where next week's episode comes in. In the meantime, I invite you to reflect on how it feels to think about ditching hope. In what ways have you bought into hope's advertising campaign? That hope, it's the only light you need to get you through the dark times. How have you bought into that marketing? Thanks so much for tuning in this week. As always, send me an email at podcast@lifefromthesummit.com if you have any questions or reflections you want to share. Please make sure to like, share, review, and leave a comment on the episode wherever you're listening so it helps bump it up in the algorithm. And I can't wait to talk to you next time about how we ditch hope. So in the meantime, stay gold, Gen Xers.